Hi there, welcome to the second part of my embellished Astronan bag. Now, for those of you that didn't see the first bit, I'm using old recycled velvets from my mum's stash. So I've got bags of these velvets everywhere, and they come in different colours, and I chose these blues and reds for this particular project, and I cut them on the Sizzix machine. So I put the double-sided web on the back first, ran them through the cutting machine because I'm fundamentally very lazy, and have now ironed them onto the Astronan bag. And I've done most of the stitching, but I'm just going to finish showing you the last couple of stitches because it's quite a simple technique, but not everyone will do it. I love the use of textured fabrics, and anyone who's watched any of my work for any time at all know that I use a lot of silks and velvets and shiny things and things I can burn and all sorts of other stuff. So this is an example. I love that this has got a corduroy type finish so that you've got the great texture. So you get the contrast, and particularly on the matte background of the felt that Jen has put together for her bags, which are fabulous. The velvet, the luster of the velvet just pops. So this is my front of the bag. I've been toying with all sorts of other ways of finishing them. I've actually decided I'm not going to do anything more to these flowers. I was going to potentially do some silver embroidery in there. I looked at some pearl beads. I looked at just doing some basic embroidery. But I actually, for this particular project, I like the simplicity of just the shapes. So there's got a bit of an elegance to it. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this over to the other side. Now, with the Astronan bags, they come complete, ready for you to construct. So this one has the, this is the Anna tote, A-A-A-N-N-A tote. They come with the hardware already included, and on the back side you've got a pocket. So the only thing I'm just going to point out here is to make sure that when you're stitching on the back and embellishing the back, you bring the pocket out of the way so that you're not catching it in your stitching. Oh no, I've done the back. I just did 3 little ones on the back there. And you'll recall when I spoke last, I cut these in a hurry and I wasn't paying a lot of attention. So some of my flowers didn't cut perfectly. That's okay, they just go on the edges. No one ever needs to know, don't tell anyone. Okay, so I have 2 flowers here. No, I have 1 flower here and 1 flower here that needs stitching. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. So I've got my Sew Steady table and the grid glider on, and this is good because you can see how much that's extended my space for my banana. So anyway, the grid glider, I mention that because it actually does make a difference in a second, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to try not to get my hands too much in the way as I stitch. It makes it a bit hard and it changes the focus. So I'm going to try and keep one hand as far away as possible, but bear with me. Okay, it's a bit awkward stitching around the camera and the tripod, but we're nothing if not creative and flexible. So this is where I'm working up here. So on the edge, I'm just actually going to do a stitch to hold that in place along the edge. Now I've ironed these pieces in place with the double-sided web, and if you don't know anything about double-sided web, go to my last video on this project. So I'm just going to roll that up so it's got less bulk, and now I'm going to turn this around and I'm working from there. Now, as I said in the last video, I don't like to do buttonhole stitch on this style of work. I like the aesthetic of the straight line. So once I get away from the edge, I'm just stitching just inside the flowers, and I keep my needle down. So for those of you that got that function on your sewing machine, keep the needle down, and then with the grid glider I actually generally don't have to lift the foot because I can just keep swiveling it around. This is proving me a liar just because it can. Just stitch around the flower, go to the point and swivel it, and it comes around beautifully. Trying really hard to keep my left hand out of the picture because it changes the focus of the camera. Now with these bags it's important that you do all the embellishment and then put them together. So it's ready to construct. Now once I've done this, I'm going to show you a second bag that I've been working on. I've chosen a bad flower to show you as an example because it keeps getting caught on the edge. I'm just doing this half flower. And then I've got one more that's a bit rounder. This one's a bit, because it's got lots of points, there's lots of turns on here. But we're nearly done. So when you're working with velvets or other shiny stuff, as I constantly say in all of my videos, as long as you stabilise the back, it's going to behave. So in the case of these projects, I've stabilised the back with my double-sided web. Sometimes I'll use a really lightweight fusible interfacing if I'm piecing or if I'm doing something that's a bit more structural, because I don't necessarily want a lot of body. And then sometimes I'll make them quite solid and stiff with a much firmer interfacing, depending on the project and how you want the fabric to behave. But once you've got some stabiliser on the back, it behaves exactly the same as your cottons, except you get all that gorgeous lustre and brilliance with the piece. So I'll just quickly finish this bit up, and then we'll move to the last flower, which is going to be a bit more curvy. Now, because this felt's a reasonable thickness, you can very easily bury your ends. So, like when you're quilting, you can thread up your needle and bury the ends into the heart of the felt without having to tie loose ends. And I'm going to do that on the back with all my ties. But on the front I have just been doing a double stitch so that going backwards and forwards, just so that I've got some stability there without having to worry too much about loose ends. Okay, so this one, my last little flower that I'm going to do. And this one, because it's mainly curves, it's a little bit easier to just swing around, and I don't have the same number of points that I'm constantly working around. So keep the focus on the flower if I can. You can see this one's behaving much better. As I just work my way around. Now I don't tend to worry about being too precise on all of this because most of the stitching will be completely lost in the velvet. It's the beauty of having a pile, so that you can lose any of your faults and errors quite easily. You can always unpick, but I don't like to unpick. So I try to match the colours as best I can to the flowers that I'm stitching. But sometimes I just do a strong contrast, but in this case with these flowers I was able to match the colours fairly easily. And we're coming up to being done on here. So hopefully you can see how quick and easy it is. And the grid glider does make life a little bit easier because it means I'm not lifting the foot as much as I could be. Okay, and there we go. So that's my flowers all stitched onto my bag. So that's that all stitched and looking quite pretty and glossy, I think. Looks really nice. And I like the simplicity of that style. So I'm going to change where we are. I'm going to move the camera, so I'll come back to you in a minute and talk to you about how I'm going to do the next stage to finish this off, and show you the other bag that I've been working on. Right, so here's one I've just completed. I'm resting it on a mound of linens from my mum. So the bag has the sides stitched in. You can see the sides. It needs a bit of a press, and I need to do a bit of work just basically using it. I used a whole pile of Yazi gold trims and wove them and stitched them. And I particularly love that effect. Now, when I was doing the stitching, I'm not generally a fan of metallic thread, but I had to use gold on that because obviously I didn't want any colour other than gold. So I used the Wonderful metallic 40 weight. It's a little bit thinner. 40 weight, no, it's a tiny bit thicker than your 50 weight cotton. And I bought it as part of the Christmas cheer pack at Christmas. Hadn't tried it before. It is an amazing thread. I really loved it. Really loved it. I didn't change anything. I didn't change my needle. I didn't change my pressure. Didn't change my tension. I just stitched metallic thread wrapped around a round core so it's strong and stable. Anyway, that came up beautifully. So this is how this bag finished, and I'm really very pleased with it. Just got to get it to give it some love so it sits properly. And the other thing that the Astronan kits come with are the magnetic clasp. So before I stitch this completely, before I stitch this bag, I will put the metallic clasp on, and I'll show you doing that as well. But this is what it looks like inside. Anyway, that's what I've been working on at the moment. I'm going to make several of these bags, and I think they're a perfect gift and really functional. So you can personalise the embellishment to the person you're giving as a gift if you want to. You can create your own designs. You can do something really complex or something quite simple and straightforward. And I just love the versatility. If you compare the two designs, they're going to be completely different, but both quite wonderful. Anyway, I will come back next week with the final stage of this bag, and I will talk to you then. I hope you enjoyed that.